And so, as many of you have already had the pleasure and privilege of seeing Brother Shanahan here this morning, Scott and Rebecca and Violet are back with us. And it's so good to have y'all with us here back at Margaret Street. And so this morning, we're going to hear the report from Mission Italy. And then Scott's going to speak for us during our worship time. And then this evening, we have Brother Trevor Smoot with us, who is a candidate for our domestic missions program. And Trevor's right over here. Trevor, if you wouldn't mind standing up so everybody can see you, be sure and meet Trevor and get to know him. That's the whole purpose of bringing him in. He took some time to come down and to visit with us so that he can meet us and we can meet him. So be sure and spend some time with him as well. Brother, we are excited to hear your report. Let's do it.
Buongiorno tutti, che piacere di essere con voi stamattina. Good morning, everyone. What a pleasure it is to be with you this morning. We are so excited to be here. I mean, we barely made it in the door with all the hugs and all the love and the greetings, and boy, it just feels good to be home. We're so excited to be here. We've been in the States for about a month now, I guess, right at a month, and we have already been a lot of places. We're a little road weary, so it's good to be here and be able to spend some time with our family at Margaret Street. We have missed you, and we are just delighted to be with you this morning. We're going to talk to you this morning about the work that we are doing, and when I say we, one of the failings of the English language is that we don't have a way to say we that is clear who you're talking about, right? And Italian has the same problem. When we used to live in Pohnpei, there's a way to say we that means everybody, and we that means just us. Well, I'm saying we, all of us together. This is Margaret Street's work. This is your work. This is our work together. Let's talk about the work you've been doing for the last 2 years and 3 or 4 months. First, though, we want to tell you a little bit about the field. We'll go through this rather quickly. Most of you are probably quite familiar with Italy. Italy as a land has been inhabited since antiquity. Nobody knows exactly when it was first settled. The first Greek colony was there in 800 BC, about 800 years before Christ. Obviously, it was the home of the Roman Empire. You can see the Colosseum there on the screen. But as a nation, the modern nation of Italy was only established in 1861. So it's actually relatively new. It's actually, the modern nation is actually younger than the United States. So that's interesting. That and $2.95 will get you 1 gallon of gas at a gas station down the road here. This is not, where do I point this? Point it up there. Nope. You liar. There we go. Okay. Population of 60 million. Okay. About 60 million people. Probably, we guess, about less than 2,000 members of the Lord's Church. Okay. So that's not a very good percentage there. We are significant. What would we say? Statistically insignificant in Italy. But there's a lot of good work going on, and the gospel is being spread, which we'll talk about in a few moments. Before we get to that, let me just tell you a little bit about Italians. Now, I'm going to speak very generally here, okay? Nothing that I say is going to be true of every Italian. Just like if you were to ask somebody to describe Americans, you couldn't describe every single American in a few sentences. So this is, generally speaking, Italians are very diverse. Maybe more than you would expect. Italy is a very small country. I can't remember the size in relation to Florida. It's a little bigger than Florida. If I remember correctly, if it was a U.S. state, it would be like the 4th largest state or something like that, the 4th or 5th largest state. But they have a very diverse population. Italy is divided into regions that operate like states. And each region has its own dialect, its own specialty food, its own stereotype. And as I went too far, but they're also usually very patriotic. They love Italy. They love being Italian, okay? But as far as those different regions and that diversity goes, it's really interesting. So the further north you get, the colder people are. They're known, their reputation is to be a little bit less welcoming. And then as you get further and further south, they become known to be more hospitable, more welcoming. So the exact opposite of the United States, I would say. No, you Southerners don't agree with that, do you? But they are different. They have, each region has its own dialect. Now, in Tuscany, where we live, their dialect is actually Italian. The Italian language is based on their dialect. But then when you get like further south, it becomes harder to understand people, for us anyway. Just to tell you how it's a little bit different. So in the north, when they greet somebody, it's very crisp and very clear that buongiorno. And then in the south, when they greet somebody, it's more like buongiorno, y'all. That's not true. But they are usually very patriotic, and it's a great place to live, and we love it, and we love the Italians. They are very passionate. Now, you probably know that already. They're sort of known for their passion, but they do everything passionately, okay? And that actually is a great benefit to the Lord's church when they become Christians. They don't do anything halfway. Their food, they're very passionate about food, about art. They argue passionately, and they argue with strangers passionately, and they sometimes argue with me passionately, and that took some getting used to, okay, because they are not afraid to get in a stranger's face and yell at them. And what we found out, because this was really bothering us, especially Rebecca had a hard time with it, especially right at first. People just you do one little mistake and they just go nuts. And one of our tutors said, they expect you to yell back. And she said, and if you don't, they don't know what to do. Like, so if they come up to you and say, and you just sort of, oh, I'm so sorry, they just kind of, and it's very interesting. So that's the key to, now I actually don't do that, I usually yell back, but that's the key to blowing their minds. They just have no idea what to do with that. But it's just very interesting. They're usually very committed to family. Raise your hand, have you ever seen the show Everybody Loves Raymond? You ever seen that show, right? And they're an Italian family, and the mother is always doting on him especially, but both of her sons. Now, I said before that I was speaking generally. That stereotype is 100% true for 100% of Italian mothers, okay? They love their children, and especially their boys. There's a scene I've seen played out in Italy 1,000 times. You're walking down the road, and you see some guy, maybe a big burly construction worker, you know, and he pulls out his phone, and he's walking down the road, and, ciao, mamma. It's just the cutest thing you'd ever want to see, right? We were at a store the other day, and this lady picked up her phone, and I knew immediately she was talking to her son because the first question she asked was, have you eaten yet? And then the second one was, what did you eat? And it's just really interesting how they relate as families. Religious life in Italy, 85% are Christian. Those are quotes. They're what Italian quotes look like. I can't get my computer to do English quotes. But 85% are Christian, of which 80% are Catholic, but only around 30% of those are active, okay? So most of them are Catholic the way I was Catholic, which is somebody says, what's your religion? Catholic. When's the last time you went to church? Oh, Christmas, 7 years ago, I think it was, maybe. No, I don't remember. But they're not very active, not very religious. Most denominations, if not all, are represented, and there is a growing Muslim population. Now, every time we're in the States and we talk about the growing Muslim population in Italy, people get scared. They're not radicalized. They're mostly, the Muslim population is growing through immigration, people coming from North and West Africa into Italy and into Europe. And they're not normally radicalized, so there's no real danger of terrorism. We've never heard any even whispers of a terrorism problem there. We just see it as a potential field to evangelize, which we'll talk about more in a little while, if we can get there. Okay, the Lord's Church. The Lord's Church is made up of several small and dying congregations. They are, there we go. The vast majority of members are over 60. Now, there's nothing wrong with being over 60. I'm getting closer to it every single day. I'm not as close as Troy. He's way closer than I am, but that's okay. But there's nothing wrong with being over 60, but there's a huge problem with churches that only have members over 60. The problem is those people are eventually going to die, and the congregations are going to die with them. There are very few youth or young families in the churches of Christ in Italy, and that's a big, big problem. Most of the congregations, if something doesn't change, will close their doors within the next 20 years, probably. And there's, we don't need to go back. There's one strong, active congregation in Sicily that I know of. They're the only congregation of about 30 or 40 congregations in Italy. There's one that has a full-time preacher. They're the only one that I know of that has it and that is actually growing. Well, there's another one that's growing. We'll talk about them in just a few minutes. But for the most part, they're doctrinally sound. Some outliers, so you find some to the far left where they might even use instruments or have women in leadership roles, and then some to the far right where they are, I forgot Bliss is expecting. So when she walked in just now, whoa, okay. Congratulations, guys. There are some to the anti-extreme as well. But for the most part, they're doctrinally sound. This is driving me bananas, Troy. How do you use this all the time? They all want help, and they all have a desire to grow. Okay. Here is one. During COVID, we were locked down fully for 3 months. So we were not allowed to leave our house for 3 months except for to go to the store or to the doctor. You were supposedly, allegedly, you were allowed to go outside to exercise, but you had to stay within so many meters of your house. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't very far, maybe like a football field from your house. And Rebecca went out twice to do that, and twice was stopped by the police and was told to go back home right now. Well, during that time, the Churches of Christ decided to do like an Italy-wide worship and on Zoom. And here you can see there were about 74 participants, I think is what the number says at the bottom of the screen. But you can see some of those participants are actually groups of 2, 3, and 4. But that's basically, there we go. Here's the second page of that, and then the third page. And that was it. That was basically all the people who have participated. Now, that's not all the members of the Church of Christ in Italy, but it's most of them. Okay, so you can see we're dealing with a very small group in a very large place. 60 million people and very few Christians. There are probably, I don't know about in Florida, I'm sure in Nashville and in Middle Tennessee, there are congregations that have more members than there are members of the church in all of Italy in one congregation. So there's a problem. Okay, let's talk about some of our initial goals. When we got there, we first wanted to learn the language and the culture. We wanted to find students. We wanted to get the lay of the land regarding the Lord's church, what's going on, what is going on with the Churches of Christ in Italy, and we wanted to begin working with congregations, starting with the Florence Church. Well, how have we done with that? So as far as learning the language, we've made pretty good progress. We can carry on most conversations. I preach about 2 to 3 times a month. If without COVID, it would probably be every week in Italian. And I teach 2 weekly Bible classes in Italian. Rebecca's had less opportunity to learn, but she does present lessons to ladies in Italian regularly. I'll talk more about that in a little while. Violet is the best, and we're not jealous of her, except a lot. We are very jealous of her. She's hilarious. When she gets to playing with her friends, she sounds just like an Italian. I do not. Rebecca does. Rebecca, when we learned Pompeian, it was the same thing. Rebecca has an excellent ear, and she has a very, very good accent. I do not. I sound like an American trying to speak Italian. But I can remember the words very well. I can remember the words better. So if you were to take our brains and smash them together, we would be the perfect language student. Unfortunately, we're not. We're one flesh, but we're 2 brains. So that's a problem. But Violet is excellent, and she'll correct us regularly, which I don't really love. She corrects my pronunciation. Now, Italians talk with their hands, right? Well, their hand gestures mean something. So if you want to say something's perfect, you say perfetto, like you do that. If you eat something that's delicious, you say buona, okay? And then there's this thing they do like this, where it's sort of like when they're telling a story, or when they want you to kind of get on with your story. There's different ways to do it. But Rebecca was kind of doing it like this, and Violet grabs her and goes, "No, Mommy, no. Like this. Slow." It is just the funniest thing. But anyway, she does really well, and I wish I had her brain. Here we go. We have a lot of room to grow, but we are heading towards fluency. I don't have fluency in English yet. There we go. Finding students. We have worked with over 40 for the last 2 years. We currently have 20 active students all over Italy. We've moved to doing a lot online. We do just a little bit face-to-face now. But we have 20 active students all over Italy. We have Bible studies, multiple Bible studies every day, Monday through Friday. Here's one of our students, Chiara. Chiara was actually our first tutor when we arrived in Italy, and then she asked us to teach her. She wanted us to teach her. Now, let me explain how we get our Bible studies. Most of them, I'd say all but one that we have right now, are English through the Bible lessons, okay? But what I want you to understand is the way we present that to people is we tell them we have a free English program, but it's through the Bible. We emphasize that because a lot of people hear free English and want it, and we could trick a lot of people into coming just by saying free English class and then hand them the Bible. We're not doing that. You have to have an interest in Bible study to take these classes, what Chiara does. And she said, I want to learn English and I want to learn the Bible. And we have some great lessons. We had a really good lesson just a couple weeks ago about how she doesn't like that in her church, if you sin, you have to go and tell this man about your sins, and then he just tells you to go and says a bunch of Hail Marys. And she said, I don't like that. I said, I don't like it either. And it's not in the Bible. And we studied about it. And she really appreciated that. Now, she hasn't become a Christian yet. She's got a lot of work to do, but don't we all? But she's not been baptized yet, but we are getting closer and closer. And she has really opened up when it comes to that religious aspect. This is the first class I ever taught in Italy. The man, that guy, he is actually a Christian. I'll talk more about him in just a little while. That is Flavio, Ruggiero, and Lucialba. And there was another student in this class. It's not meeting now because of COVID. We weren't allowed to meet anymore, and they didn't want to go online. They're all in their 80s, and they said, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. So we're just doing, well, hopefully we'll get back to them soon. In the fall, hopefully we'll be opened up and can do that. Here, hey, you recognize a couple of people in that picture. This is our Friday night class. We were teaching again. It was canceled because of COVID. This is Valentino, one of my really good students, my favorite students. I love talking to him. Now, he's not a believer, and he will tell you that frequently. In our lessons, he tells me, well, I'm not a believer. And so you might say, well, why are you wasting your time with him? Well, I waste my time with him because he gives me the time. And he asks a lot of Bible questions. He's not a believer, and I always like to add a yet. But you know what he does sometimes? Is he's having a problem, he'll ask me to pray for him. I said, well, Valentino, you told me you're not a believer. Why are you asking me to pray for you? See, there's a little bit there. And God can do a lot with just a little bit. Can he? Amen? Okay. Well, one of the things that we had a conversation just recently, and he told me that during this whole COVID thing, he loved our weekly Bible studies. He said because it was just firm for him. He said, in fact, Scott, you're like a stone to me. He said, in fact, I could say I have a stoned Bible teacher. Said, Valentino, please don't repeat that to anybody, okay? Here's Rebecca teaching our children's class. She was teaching the children, and then their parents said, well, we have them here. Why don't you teach us? Okay, we'll do it. And so that's how we got that other study that you saw at Troy and Patsy and, don't tell me. His last name is familiar to me. Anyway, Mike. There we go. Mike Johnson, I think it was. Oops, I skipped a guy. That's okay. That was one of my other students. Stefano, you just missed. Here's how we're doing most of our studies now is through Zoom. There's Marco and Salvo. I'm not going to show you every picture of every student. This is Andrea. And you see, we have English through the Bible. We read the text. Then we have a grammar lesson. Then we usually have questions about the text. And then we do just conversation if there's time after that. And there's Andrea, one of my students. This is Mario. Mario lives in Brindisi, which is in the south of Italy, and he's a really good student. But he approached us for Bible study, not for English through the Bible. And then somebody told him about the English through the Bible program, and he decided he would do that. And he asked me to buy him a New King James Version and an Italian version. He said, would you buy that for me so I can read both of them? Or he said, no, he didn't ask me to buy it. He asked if I could send it to him. And I didn't have the Bibles to send to him, so I just ordered them on Amazon. I think it cost me like $20. And he has gone on and on and on about how grateful he is for those Bibles. So he's a really good student, and we have good hopes for him. This is my Monday night class that I teach, Mondays at 8, I think it is. Now, I have 2 younger people in that class. Kiara, who you can't see, is in her 30s. You really can't see Alicia either. You guys should turn around and look at that screen. It's way better. But Alicia is just 11, and I normally wouldn't take a student that young, but her parents are really very religiously minded. They are evangelicals, and they come anytime I preach at that congregation that's in their town. They come, and Alicia is just such a sweet kid and such a good student that I decided to take her on. And she's been really a joy to teach. She's just a really good kid. There's Rebecca teaching Kiara again, and Julia. Kiara's making a face that she probably would not love for you all to see. But that's another lesson that Rebecca teaches. Here's Rebecca teaching Marina. Marina's actually Russian, and she grew up in the Soviet Union, an atheist communist society, and now she studies the Bible every week in our home with Rebecca. This is Alicia. Alicia, you might think she doesn't look Italian, and you would be right, because she is Chinese. But she's lived in Italy for a very long time. We actually communicate in Italian, which is always humorous to the Italians, because we communicate in our second languages, there first, it just blows their mind when they see us talking. But anyway, she speaks English a little bit, but she wanted some more English lessons, so she asked Rebecca to teach her. And Rebecca said, yes, but I'm going to do it through the Bible. And she said, no, just you and me, it's okay. And Rebecca said, no, the lessons are going to be through the Bible. So she said, oh, okay, we'll try it out. And the very first lesson, they were reading a text from Mark chapter 1, and they came to this word she couldn't pronounce. And the word was Jesus. And she said, I've never seen this word before. Can you imagine? She's 35-ish, had never heard the name Jesus in her life. Now that's exciting to me, because I've never, and Rebecca's the one teaching her, we've never taught anybody who did not have 1 ounce of denominational baggage, and she doesn't. She's an open book, and she actually has gotten more interested in reading the Bible, and we have good hope. We have hopes for that lesson with her. Her daughter was, until just recently, Violet's classmate. That's how we met them. Okay, so the congregations we work with. Florence has about 25 active members. But of those, 13 are American workers. Okay, that means 12 Italians active. Now there's more members that are inactive, but 12 active Italian members in a city of 350,000 people, and that's the whole church. If the Americans were to leave, they'd be left with 12 people. That's bad. So we need to turn that around. 2 families with children, and I'm very happy to announce that one of those families, their 14-year-old daughter, Eleonora, was just baptized this morning. I didn't have time to add the pictures. They did text them to me. Eleanor is a very sweet girl, and her family is very, very faithful, and we're very excited to welcome her to our family. Please pray for Eleonora today. The majority of the congregation is over 60. Again, no problem with an individual being over 60, but the congregation is not going to last if that's the case. There's a couple of the members, Giovanni and Carla, but behind them is Carlo, and he's recently come to us. He sent an email there's like this website for the Churches of Christ in Italy, and he sent an email to it and said, I live in Florence. He said, I became a Christian 2 years ago, but I've never gone to church, and I want to walk the path of faith with somebody. And I'm so glad he reached out to us and not some group that would say, oh yeah, you did become a Christian 2 years ago in the privacy of your own home all by yourself. Now, obviously, we don't believe that. He's not been baptized into Christ, but he's come every Sunday since we started studying, and he is learning. He's not there yet. The work in Italy is slow. Don't expect it to be like when we were in Micronesia, which you probably weren't a part of that, so maybe you don't know about it, where we had baptisms every month. But we do have studies, and that's what we're there to do, is to plant the seed and water the seed and let God give the increase. And Carlo is a very exciting prospect. Here's the congregation at Florence. Most of the people in this picture are American workers, though. So that was when we were meeting on Zoom. There's Giuseppe again. I love Giuseppe. When we first arrived in Italy, Giuseppe had only been baptized. He's been baptized about 4 years ago. He's 83 years old. But he immediately helped me start finding students. And now Giuseppe is really interesting. He's Italian, but his father's French, so he speaks Italian and French fluently. He speaks Spanish fluently. In fact, he conversed with Troy and Andrea in Spanish when they were there. He speaks English fluently. He speaks German fluently. And because of English and German, he can actually read every Nordic language. He's an amazing, amazing guy, and I just love him to death. I can't say enough good things about him. There I am preaching in Florence. I usually preach there about once a month. I've gotten to where I don't have to look at my notes the whole time, which is good, but I'm still not quite there. We also work with the Pistoia congregation about 45 minutes north of Florence, 25 members. You're going to sense a pattern here. There are a few young children, but only their dad is a Christian, their mom is not, in actually two different cases there. Most members are older and married to non-Christians with no faithful children. I went to lunch with this guy, Giovanni. We usually, when I go there, we go the last Sunday of every month when we can, and he takes me out to lunch, and he said, when I was a boy, this congregation, he's probably about 70, he said, this congregation had about 60 members. He said, but all the adults were married to other Christians. He said, but then my generation, we all married non-Christians, and not one of us has baptized any of our children. So that's a problem. And that congregation, which I love, is on the ropes, as they say. There's the congregation. Notice that monitor in the background. That'll become important here in a few minutes. There's Violet. She loves going to this congregation because there's actually children there, those 3 little girls that she likes to play with. We also work with the Rome congregation. They're the biggest congregation we work with. We go there once a quarter. They have around 40 members. That guy and that guy are actually elders in the church. They have elders, which is great, around 40 members, but not one child in that congregation. 4 million people, around 40 members of the church, not one child in the congregation. That's a problem. Violet actually, I'll never forget the first time we went there. We went in the building on a Wednesday night and we said, do you have Bible class for children? They said, we don't have any children. I mean, just imagine, how long can the church last? It can't. There I am preaching in Rome. Now, obviously, Paul did not preach in this building, probably, but he did preach in that city, and that blows my mind when I think about the fact that I'm preaching in the same city that Paul did. I love that. There's Tanya, one of our good friends now. She and Rebecca, not Violet, she and Rebecca called each other about once a week during COVID, during that lockdown, and became very close. Actually, Violet did like going to that congregation because they had Barbie dolls for her to play with, and that was very exciting to her. She's like, can we go to that church that has the toys? We also work with the Milan congregation. Again, we try to go there once a quarter, around 30 members. They're mixed with Italians and Filipinos. Very, very sound in the faith. We have a Wednesday night Bible class that I teach them. Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. we meet. And it's a very good class, and they're very active in that class, and I love teaching them. This is Isabel. She's Filipina, and her husband is over here. You can't see him, Francesco. He's Italian. Now, notice that kind of looks weird in that picture. The reason why it looks weird and why she's all bundled up is because they couldn't get internet inside their house, so they took their phone outside and sat in 35-degree temperature for an hour and learned about the book of Acts. That's dedication. And we just need to grow that and get that influence out there. And I love that class and that congregation. I teach that class in Italian. I teach another one on Wednesday nights with Prato, and this one is harder. They have around 35 members. Are you noticing a pattern? There's one young couple that has no children, and they don't have a remote that works. And then there are 2 young families at Prato, but the majority of the congregation is older. You can see this is our Wednesday night class. This guy in the top right-hand corner, that's Michele. He's the one who set it up. Have you ever seen the movie Up? The movie Up that with Ed Asner plays Mr. Fredrickson. This is the Italian Ed Asner. I love this guy. He's super rude, but I love it. He called me to set up this study, and he's like, "Ciao, Scott. Sono Michele. Scott, I'm Michael. Want you to teach a Bible class Wednesday nights for the congregation." I said, "Okay, I can do that. You'll teach for 45 minutes, 15 minutes of questions." "Okay, bye." That was it. That was the whole conversation. And I said, wait a minute. I'm going to answer questions. Nobody in this congregation speaks English, so they ask questions in Italian, And it's super, super challenging. Now, it has helped me to improve my Italian, but they usually have to repeat their question a couple of different ways before I get it. But it's an exciting opportunity for me to do that, and also I really like teaching them. They have very, very good questions, actually. We've also worked with the Taranto congregation. They have around, guess how many? 35 members. They have one single young man and not one single child. They do have a dog that comes to church, which is nice, but no children except for Violet in this picture. Now, they're very far south Italy, so we only get there about once a year. They're a good congregation, but again, they're dying, and they're going to die if something doesn't change. We've also just recently started working with the Vicenza congregation. Now, they actually have two congregations. One is Italian, and one is African. Now, the African congregation is mostly Ghanaians. We always act like Africa is one giant country, but they're mostly from Ghana. I was at a congregation a couple weeks ago, and they were telling me about this missionary they have in Africa. I said, oh, in what country? And the deacon of missions didn't know. He was like, just Africa. Africa's a ginormous continent. You need to find out where your missionary is. I mean, just imagine, oh, we've got this guy over in Europe, someplace, you know. Anyway, they have about 25 and 40, 25 for the Italian congregation, no children, 40 for the African congregation. They do have children, and they're vibrant, and they're growing. And we went and I spoke at both congregations, and it was very, very, very encouraging. They're both very sound in the faith. I wasn't going to do this because I don't know how much time I have. I've got enough time, I guess. This is, in Italian, the words with the capital letters are the Lord's Prayer, the model prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven. What it says is, don't say Father if every day you don't act like a son. Don't say our if you live isolated from your neighbor. Don't say who is in heaven if you only think on earth. This sign, by the way, was on their church building. Don't say your name is holy if you don't honor it. Don't say your kingdom come if you confuse that with material success. I love this poem, the thoughts in this. Don't say, where was I? Don't say your will be done if you don't accept it when it's difficult. What a great message that is. Don't say, give us this day our daily bread if you're not worried about those around you who are hungry and who don't have anybody with them and who don't have the will to live anymore. Don't say, forgive our sins if you hold sins and anger against your brother. Don't say, don't introduce us into temptation. I love this. If you have the intention to continue to sin. Don't say, deliver us from evil if you don't take a position against evil. And don't say amen if you don't take serious the words of our Father. I love that. That tells you where this congregation stands, doesn't it? It's a great congregation. There I am. I was preaching for the Italian group. They made me keep the mask on. It's kind of like here in some congregations we've gone to, we've had to wear masks, others we haven't. They said I even had to keep it on when I was speaking. They did ask me to pull it down to show them my face and then put it back up. I guess they didn't like what they saw. I don't know. That's Francesco. He is the guy I contacted. And when I contacted him to go and preach there, he said, yeah, come on, and we have a Ghanaian congregation that would probably like to have you come as well. And so they invited me to preach for the Italian congregation. There's the Italian congregation, and there is the Ghanaian congregation. I don't know if you can spot them, but there's Violet and Rebecca. They blend in very well there. And now the Ghanaian congregation I loved preaching for them. It was in English. The service is in English, but they have a translator for their native language, which is called Chi. And I did not expect that, but we hit this great rhythm, and it reminded me of being back in the islands. And it was just a great experience. And they really seemed to be encouraged by it. They knew I was coming, but apparently nobody told them my name, because they had this list on the screen of people participating in worship. Get to that picture, please. There we go. Okay. So the Bible reading was Brother Urset Nyame, and then the sermon was Brother American Precker. It's okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Brother American Precker. Hopefully they know my name now. I love the names when you get, like, in Micronesia, we met people with really funny names. We met a guy that was named Shaq O'Neal Johnson. We met another guy who was named Whiny Hiney. And this guy from Africa is named Fast Friend Saki, Bliss and Blake, consider fast friend. It works for a boy or a girl, okay? All right, let's move on. What are the results? Before I get to that, here's Rebecca they have it every other Monday. They have a ladies' class for all of Italy. Rebecca has presented lessons in the Italian language for that class 3 times now. And one of the ladies wanted me to tell you specifically how encouraged the ladies are by Rebecca and how hard she works. I don't know if you noticed, but in those pictures of our Bible studies, Rebecca was in a lot of them, wasn't she? Rebecca is one of the hardest working people I know. She takes good care of our house. She takes great care of me. She takes excellent care of Violet. That made it sound like she takes better care of Violet than me. Well, Violet needs more help than I do, like a little bit. But anyway, but she also is a great missionary. I think it's interesting because if we were preaching at a congregation here in the States, you would never say our preachers, Scott and Rebecca, but we say our missionaries, Scott and Rebecca. And Rebecca is a missionary. You know, Paul talks in Corinthians about becoming all things to all people. And I want to tell you, I've seen Rebecca sit on a dirt floor and eat raw fish with her bare hands in a tin shack. And I've seen her sit at a 5-star restaurant with Italians, and in both cases share the gospel with them. She has become all things to all men, and I'm just so delighted that she is not just my wife, but my partner in this work. And also, more impressive than all that, this morning she killed a spider all by herself. So we have met all of our initial goals. I preach regularly in 7 congregations. We have students in 7 different cities. Come on in. 6 have been baptized this last year. Actually, it's 7 now because Eleonora was baptized this morning. So that is good news. That we can actually get results in Italy. They're slow, but they're there. Now, come on. We can do it. Okay, here's where we're working. We'll go through that quickly. Florence, Pistoia, Milan, Vicenza, Rome, Taranto, and Prato. And we are hoping to plant a church in Torino. There was 3 people baptized there this past year, 1 couple and 1 single lady. They worship through Zoom with Pistoia. Do you remember me telling you to look at that monitor? Remember that monitor? That's how they worship. There's no congregation in their city. Now, he became a Christian, and this is their friend. This is the couple, and that's their friend. And I can't remember any of their names right now. Drawing a blank on all their names, but that's okay. The day he was baptized, she was too. So we assumed they were married. They're not. They're married. And about 2 months after he was baptized, he and their friend were baptized, we got a message saying, I've taught my wife. She wanted to be baptized. I filled our bathtub and baptized her immediately. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? So this is a place we want to try to plant a congregation. There's no congregation there. I mean, there is technically because there's the 3 of them. So we want to visit them. We have not been able to because of COVID. We want to worship with them, pass out tracts in the city. It's a possible campaign site. There it is up there near France. Does anybody speak French? No. Okay. That's okay. We won't hold that against you because it could be helpful in that corner of Italy. Okay, we also want to start a Italian through the Bible class. I'm about a year away from being able to do that, maybe not quite a year. Remember I said all those Muslims that are emigrating into Italy, they need jobs. And to get jobs, you need to speak Italian. And there's this huge, thousands in Florence, this huge pool of people we can share the gospel with through Italian lessons. And they're from third world countries, and forgive me for being a little prejudiced, but I have experience in third world countries, and people in third world countries, generally speaking, are more spiritually minded than those of us from the developed world, okay? And so we want to hit this group, and we're very close to being able to start that. And then we want to do an online preaching school. We're about 3 years probably away from doing that. One of our problems is right now we wouldn't have very many students, so we need to get some baptisms, get some students. I've got about 3 guys, I think, that would be interested in it. But we would do it all online so they can stay in their city and they can learn the Bible to do the work themselves. I would have more to say about that, but we have to move on. We do have some needs. I know you pray for us every Sunday, every Wednesday. I want to ask you as individuals to pray for us. Encouragement. Now, what does that mean? I don't mean by this, I don't need you after the lesson, oh, you're doing great work. We don't need that. Just every now and then, send us a note. Let us know you're here. If you get our newsletter, respond to it and just let us know. Now, Andrea is really good about that, and I really appreciate that. Joe, Oh, wait, I forgot he's an elder. Joe is so good at that. No. But no, just if you can, just send a note. It doesn't have to be long, but let us know how you're doing. Just keep in touch with us, because sometimes you do get lonely out there, and it's always good to hear from people. Well, we are doing pretty good with monthly and one-time support. I'm not 100% sure. I actually have to talk to Andrea about some of the support that has come in. This trip has turned out to be a lot more expensive than we thought it was going to be, because prices in the U.S. have gone insane. And I don't know if you've had to rent a car or stay in a hotel recently, but the prices are outrageous. If you want to become a monthly or one-time supporter, you can just give right here. $10 a month goes a very long way. Here's our address. Now, you don't need our support address. I guess I should have taken that off. Well, maybe you don't know the address here. You come here automatically. You never knew the address. If you ever want to send us a card, it can be sent right there. There's my email. Either one of those will work for me. If you don't get our newsletter, send me an email and I'll start sending it to you. In August, you'll get one. Okay, I went about 2 minutes over. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I'll leave that up on the board if that's okay for a few minutes. Anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to ask after Bible class or after worship. Thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to worshiping God with you here in a few moments.